For over 40 lifters, doing body part splits and higher reps does make a little more sense. Hey everybody, I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. And this is something I've come to over many years. Keeping in mind when I first started making videos, I was in my really my mid-30s, right? Mid-30s, and now at the age of 47, closing in on 48. As someone who's hit some pretty dang big lifts in my 40s, one of the things that I personally noticed myself and with a lot of my clients is that, doing the higher frequency and heavier work, it really becomes a problem. In other words, if we try to bench heavy twice a week, try to squat heavy twice a week, or more, or any of this stuff, it just really beats your recovery into the ground. Okay, it's also how we start to accumulate overuse injuries and things. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind, most of our strength is going to come from our muscle mass. Like this is understood. The data on this is overwhelming. Okay, the data on this is overwhelming. Okay, neural drive and all that technique, all those things are important, but our muscle mass really is the primary factor. And we know that split routines at this point in the game are capable of building just as much muscle as higher frequency. And it's also because with the higher frequency, the data is showing we don't always recover from session to session, right? So when people say, yeah, but you'll be able to lift more and do all this. But the thing is, we don't always recover session to session. The same thing with reps, right? 8+ reps builds just as much muscle as lower reps, if not more potentially, right? Because again, we can handle higher volumes of it sometimes without getting as beat up. And again, quality training volume is a factor in muscle growth. So we're not losing anything on the hypertrophy side. Again, moderate to high reps on once a week programming has never failed to produce muscle mass. Plenty of people have bodybuilt this way for decades. Okay, and the evidence at this point is showing that, a lot of our ideas on frequency were not really valid. We were looking at some preliminary studies and things, and the evidence-based side of things, looking at muscle protein synthesis, but when it's all been measured, it doesn't pan out. That meaning training muscles at volume is equal once a week. Training a muscle once a week produces just as much growth as 2 or 3 times a week. Okay. Same thing, we know that most rep ranges are capable of producing pretty close to maximum hypertrophy. So that being said, when we start looking at the needs of slightly older lifters, what's the biggest problems we run into? Our joints and our tendons. Okay, and that is simply part of the aging process. People say, well, couldn't you just take TRT? Well, yeah, of course we can. And if we have low testosterone, we probably should. Okay, I'm a big proponent of this. However, that still doesn't help joints and tendons. And I want people to think about that. Has using exogenous testosterone, to anyone's knowledge, ever helped tendons? Like, when you think about that, have you ever heard people say, yeah, I use a bunch of testosterone and my tendon health went way up, I never get injured? Or do you see, when certain things go into the mix, that muscles can outpace tendons? In other words, oftentimes we're not seeing an increase in tendon hypertrophy. Okay, and that's not necessarily true in the normal range, but stop and think about that. It doesn't make your tendons more durable. So as we get older, with some of the stuff that happens, we produce less growth hormone, we produce less IGF-1, we have certain genetic damage, collagen synthesis goes down. Again, if you want evidence of collagen synthesis going down with age, we get wrinkles. Wrinkles, loose skin, these are normal as you get older, and they progress with each decade of age. So I'm not saying they're going to always be super pronounced in your 40s, but I think everyone realizes in your 40s, basic collagen synthesis does start to reduce, okay? And it's not just your skin, it's going to be tendons and things. Tendons are going to recover slower. Your joints have accumulated injuries and traumas and scar tissues over time. Okay? Do you see where we're going with some of this? If you step back and think about that. So if tendons potentially recover a little slower, our joints recover a little slower and hurt more, our training needs to take that into account. And what some of the stuff that we note, lifting heavier weights, right? Lifting heavier weights can be a little harder on those things. It can be harder on the joints, right? It can be harder on the joints. Keeping in mind, if you've gained large amounts of muscle and you've been training a while, your high reps are going to be heavier than most people's maxes. So we're still lifting pretty dang heavy. But here's the thing that I would say. If we're talking about quality sets and just being easier on the joints, it's probably better to do 12 reps at 225 than it is to do 3 reps or 4 reps with 315. Okay? And I'm not saying we can't do some heavy training, right? I'm not saying some heavy sets here and there are a problem. I'm not saying we can't max out sometimes. What I'm saying is it has to take a backseat in our training. We can't come in as over 40 lifters, or particularly start hitting 50 or 60, and do a heavy 5x5 on your big movements every single week. Okay? Or a heavy 3x3 every week on all your stuff. Particularly multiple exercises. Right? People are coming and thinking, oh, I'm going to do this on the squat and on the bench press every week or twice a week. Yeah, it's going to be a problem. Maybe not as a novice. Novice over 40, sure. But what happens when you actually have a base? Yeah, you might need to spend more time doing 8 to 12. You might need to spend more time doing 10 to 15. And it's the same thing with the tendons, and it's the same thing with the training frequency. By giving everything a week to recover, we give all those tendons time to recover. By using a little less weight and more reps, we don't beat the joints up as much. Okay, it lets us stay in the game longer and continue to gain muscle, because the muscle is really the key to the longevity. Keeping your muscle mass high and your body fat low is extremely beneficial to our health. It's extremely beneficial to our quality of life. Okay? And training in that manner is actually beneficial to both. Okay? It's beneficial to both. Burn a little more calories, a little more metabolic rate, but we can gain more muscle. And if we can do it while being beat up less, then we can get away with a little more quality training volume to gain a little more muscle, and we keep that cycle going. Okay? And so that's the point that I'm making here. As we get older, it would behoove us, even if our goal is strength, to consider training in this manner. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.